the Writer's Dream. This is a forum where authors can talk about how they write their books, how they publish their books, and how they market them. Visit us on our Facebook page, The Writer's Dream, to ask questions and leave comments. Today's guest is Maria Daddino, and Maria Daddino is an East Ender, yes, and she is the author of DuckTales, Wildlife Stories from My Garden.
Yes.
And this is an award-winning book. Would you like to tell us about the awards?
Yes. My family and friends all told me what a wonderful book it was, and I didn't believe them. So I thought if I entered it in some award contest, I would get to know just if it was good or not. And the first one was in Los Angeles, and I received first honorable mention. And then I started entering more contests, and almost every contest I entered, I either won or was a runner-up or received honorable mention. Most of the contests or award contests were for indie books.
What does that mean, indie books?
Published independently, not with a little press that supports the book. You have to pay for it totally yourself. And but some of the contests were also with traditionally published books, and I just received notice this month that I won the silver in the animal category at the Reader's Favorite Awards.
That's exciting.
It was, and I'm going to Miami, to the Miami Book Fair in November to get my medal, and it's billed as the biggest book fair in the nation.
Yes, I heard that, and actually I have a friend who's going there. She's also a member of Long Island Authors Group, Suzanne Luttrell. She was on the show. You'll have to meet up with her and talk to her.
That's wonderful. And the Indie Reader Discovery Award was presented at the Javits Center during Book Expo. Wow. So my little book is taking me on quite a journey. A year ago, I was almost sorry I got involved in publishing it, but now I'm very happy.
All right, so tell us about your book.
We live in such a digital, fast-paced age, and I think people need to stop and smell the roses, get involved in nature. And I meet so many people who, when an animal comes into their garden, they're ready to trap it, kill it, get rid of it. So my book, it is not a professional type book. It's a little heartwarming book where I hope readers see that animals have feelings, they have souls. You could coexist in a beautiful garden with wildlife. And I guess that was the purpose of writing the book, so that people would value and respect wildlife. And while it's got educational and informative things in it, it's more low-key. It's more about the animals and their feelings.
I see that you're also featured in this month's newsletter of the Long Island Authors Group,
yes,
where some of the officers of the club went to visit your garden. Tell us about your garden.
Oh, my garden. I don't mean to.
Well, your poster here.
It's wonderful.
It's beautiful.
It's mostly native plants. As you said, I live on the East End, and this is a marvelous place to live. I use no chemicals in my garden, and I have all sorts of wildlife in, and it's very biodiverse environmentally. I have beneficial insects. They eat the bad insects. The birds eat the bad insects. And I've been here 9 years, and I have never had any sort of an infestation of anything. It's sort of a testament to how scary the chemical companies are, because they tell us that we need to feed our plants with this chemical. The plant gets weakened, then we use a chemical to get rid of the bugs, and then we refertilize. Everything in my garden is natural. And my problem now is that I really don't have any weeds. I have to give away plants because I don't cut down my garden in the fall. I leave all the seed heads and they spread, the birds spread the seeds. I have all sorts of wildlife visitors. Deer come every night. I've planted things specifically for the deer to eat, hoping that they get full before they come into.
So you don't actually feed the animals, you put things in the garden
Yes.
that the animals will eat?
Yes, and I do have a corn bowl in a few places, a bowl of cracked corn, but the birds like it, the raccoons like it, the groundhogs like it.
Squirrels.
But squirrels, and I do have bird feeders up for my birds. But basically, I have clover in the lawn for the bunnies, and yeah, it's sort of a little environment unto itself.
So tell us about your characters. Your book must have characters.
Oh, it does. It has twin ducks, Patches and Peanuts. Their mother, Grace, was quite beautiful and very attached to me. All the animals in the book were wild. I had a relationship with them, but they were not pets. Grace allowed me to watch her eggs hatch, and out of this very big egg came Peanut and Patches.
Are they mallards?
No, they were Muscovy ducks. And Peanut evidently got the brains because she became the leader of all the ducks, and she was quite stern, and her babies always listened to her. Her sister Patches was the diva duck. She was the Scarlett O'Hara. She complained all the time. She picked on my pants. She practically swooned. And she was in love with Robert J. Now, Robert J. was a mixture, very much of a mixture of ducks, and he had blue eyes, and he was black and white. And he was quite the ladies' man, which frustrated Patches. And every summer he'd disappear, and I think I lost him, and he'd come back, and the girls would beat him up, and they didn't do that to any other duck. And one summer, I found out, I was looking for him, and I found out where he went. He went to the local bar called Hogan's Goat, and the people there loved him, and he'd waddle in, and they'd give him food. So they're my funny characters. I mean, I write about a squirrel that I raised from a tiny baby where I fed him with doll bottles and then released him, and he was a friend of mine for many years. And there's a story about Osprey in there. Now, I wasn't that close with them because, that...
Because of what they are.
Yeah, and then the swans, I knew them for many years, and they allowed me to be with their babies, to actually rescue a cygnette when it got caught in fishing line.
That's amazing.
It really...
Swans are pretty
Yes.
hostile.
And the first time they brought their baby to me, I was, with trepidation, I netted it and I talked to them. They were really very all right with it. They stayed in the water and they watched me, but the baby was very upset. After that, he hissed at me all the time, but I got the fishing line off him. And every year, my neighbors would call me when there was a cygnette with fishing line wrapped around him, and they'd say, "They're on their way. Sarah Beth and Diablo are on their way to your house."
Yeah, so those are, how about the turkey? I see there's a turkey there.
He didn't make the book because the book was really written more about my home in Bayshore where I lived on the water.
Okay.
I'm doing a second book about here, but turkeys, I think in the 1990s, because of DDT and all, they almost became extinct out here.
I think they were protected, as were the
Yes,
osprey.
yes, exactly. And then they were reintroduced out on the East End, and everyone thought it was ridiculous that they wouldn't survive, and now they're all over.
I have had experiences where I'm on a back road out here, and I counted them once, a herd of 24 of them.
Oh, my
And
goodness.
they are beautiful.
They are. They learned, I have a ranch house, and somehow they learned that if they land on my roof, my bedroom roof, and make a lot of noise, I evidently must get up to feed them, because this is like a routine now. They just land on the roof and jump around.
So those turkeys are really not turkeys. They're pretty smart, huh?
Yes, they really are. And the mama turkey, when her son gets as big as she is, she pushes him out. And she happened to have all girls and him, and so he was alone and very lost. I'd find him sitting on my front door in a snowstorm, and I'd be like, Tommy, I can't help you. You have to do it on your own.
I see that you have a piece in the Southampton Press.
Yes,
How did that go? What inspired them to come and...
I write a column for the Southampton Press. I write the East Quad column from Fourth Neck. And they all know how much I love animals. And they were all thrilled that I published a book. And they tried to do the article when it coincided with my reading at the Quag Library. And it was really fun to be on the other side of the interview. And
I would imagine so.
yes.
Yeah. So, and tell me about the deer. I really have a special love for deer. And it seems like many people on Long Island do not have it.
I have that special love, and I've found that the very people that hate them take away all their food, their natural habitat. The deer were here first, and they're hungry. When I moved into my house, it was just a pile of sand, but I have woods all around, which I kept. And there were deer trails. And I left the buffers, the natural conservation buffers, totally pristine. The low-growing blueberry bushes grew. All the stuff that they eat is in there. The people in my community who cleared this have major problems with the deer because they come up and eat their flowers. And then, sort of like decorating a house, you have to know your habitat outside. You wouldn't, if you don't want deer, you don't plant what they like. They love arborvitae, but there is an arborvitae called green giant that the deer don't eat, so I lined my property with it. I've found that with just a little bit of care, you can have a beautiful garden and have deer in it.
Now, obviously, your inspiration for this book was your love of ecology, animals, plant life, and your wish to preserve it. When did that all start?
Well, I grew up in Brooklyn on cement streets.
I grew up in Queens, but I had a cemetery across the street, so we had a little greenery.
We had no garden. It was all cement. It was also a time, I grew up in a poor neighborhood, East New York, and people did not read for pleasure. They read because they had to. And my school didn't even have a library, so I used to sneak off to the library, and I think that's where my love of nature came, because I'd read all these wonderful books and say, someday I'm going to have that collie, which I've had 5 collies, because I read Albert Payson Terhun's collie books, which I loved. And, I read Black Beauty, and at one point I owned a horse, and so I guess I fulfilled my childhood fantasies, but there was something inside of me that this just couldn't be denied.
And who do you find your audience is?
It's actually it's a universal book. Of course, animal lovers love it, people that love nature and wildlife, but at some of my readings, I've had people who really don't like it, don't like nature, all that much, come up and tell me, we're not like you, but we loved the stories. They were so real. So that's basically, and it's a book for all ages except very young children.
Sure. Now, are you involved with any organizations that preserve the environment?
I'm involved with the Quag Wildlife Refuge.
Oh, that's a great place. I visited that.
We just had a wonderful thing in my garden last Saturday called Wild for Wildlife in the Garden. and they brought their hawks and owls and spoke about preserving habitat and making habitat and showing a beautiful garden. And then we have a local environmentalist who works, does my garden for me, Suzanne Ruggles. She's called the Barefoot Gardener, and I've seen her run around barefoot in my garden. She gave a talk, and then everyone toured the paths. I have endangered species in my woods. When I also sell my books, and I give 40% back to the refuge. I'm involved also with the Evelyn Alexander Wildlife Rescue Center of the Hamptons, and we did a similar program at the East Quad Garden Tour in my garden. They brought their injured and rehabilitated wildlife and gave a presentation, and we encourage people to use no chemicals. I'm also involved in many East Quag organizations, beautification. I was president last year. Whatever other, the group for the East End is doing a similar exploration of my garden in the spring. So I am involved quite heavily with wildlife experts.
Now, I've noticed that, I've lived on Long Island all my life, but I have noticed that in the last, I would say, probably 25 years, the interest in preserving, especially the east end of the island, in its natural beauty has become very, very important to people who not only live out here, but I think Long Islanders in general.
Yes, it's a magical place to live. I don't live in the Hamptons, the Revenge Hamptons, but it's the wildlife that comes. I mean, I have indigo buntings.
You have to have a conversation with our director, Genevieve Lee, who is very active in Audubon, and you are mentioning all these birds, and I'm sure that you and she could have a wonderful conversation.
I should tell you, this year, I am involved also with our East End Audubon, and I heard this sound at night, and I thought I had an owl. And there's a man in East Quag who's very knowledgeable, and the president of the Audubon Society came, and she's like, they're traipsing through my woods 10 o'clock at night, and she's like, it sounds like an owl, but I'm not sure. So we called Eric Solzman, who's a bird expert, and I was telling everybody I had this. The owl wasn't rare here, but it was rare to be here and breed in the summer. And Eric came and listened, and he's a musician, and he has a wonderful ear. And he said, it's not an owl. It's one lone spring peeper frog. So
A little different frog,
yes.
owl, frog, owl.
So, all I could think of, I loved fairy tales where the frog turns into a prince while my prince turned into a frog.
Yes, we've seen that happen on occasions, yes, most of us. How long did it take you to write this book?
I really wrote it in stages, and when I wrote it, I had no intention of writing it as a book. My son in 1999 gave me Front Page, which is a software program to make a website. And in 2000, very few people had personal websites. And I said to Michael, I don't sell anything, and he's like, Mom, people love your stories. So I started, I guess, blogging, but blogging wasn't a word then. And Yahoo picked up on it. And I heard from people all over the world, almost every country, they loved my duck stories. And one of the things, the themes was, please write a book so we could give this to people. Not everyone had computers in those days. And I was at the time a sole caregiver for 4 loved ones. So this was my stress relief to go up and write. And when I was finally free to live my own life, I decided to put it all in a book and see where it went.
What was the most challenging part of publishing it?
The time it took and the mistakes. And the fact that there were things I thought a publisher should tell a novice writer, author, which they didn't. I spent a year getting the pictures done for my book because I wanted them. I learned that many authors who illustrate their books don't really care what the illustrations are. A duck is a duck. And I wanted them to be very specific, so that took a year. Then they formatted my book, and it looked beautiful, and it was going to be larger than a regular paperback because of the pictures. And then I fortunately asked for the price, and they told me $32. And I said, no one's going to pay $32 for my little book. Then we had to make it smaller. Mm-hmm. Then there were, mistakes in the, just in the printing. And I read the book so many times that I was almost getting to hate it because...
No, I know that feeling.
Yeah.
You read it over and over. You could almost repeat it from memory.
Yes, and then I guess the epitome of mistakes was they put it on Barnes & Noble as an ebook, and thank goodness I downloaded, I double-checked, and I'm reading it, and I said, oh my goodness, there are 27,000 words with no punctuation.
Oh dear.
So that was the most frustrating.
Now, did you go with a self-publishing company, or did you do it yourself completely?
No, I went with a self-publishing company because I saw a book by a local author that I liked. It was pretty. My book had to be pretty, and I liked her presentation, and I used her, publishing. But I think if I had it to do over again, I'd certainly go with someone closer to home.
Okay. Now, what happened with the pictures when you downsized the book? What happened with the pictures? You just made them smaller?
Yeah, they had to make them smaller, but then when they downsized them, they lost the perspective of them. So I had to say, no, this is not acceptable. They have to be scaled down to size. I mean, without losing the shapes and the faces, and so that was quite a challenge. And I was really sorry at that point that I decided to publish it.
But now, the book has won many awards. Has that helped you in marketing?
Yes and no. I haven't, to be honest, sold as many books as I'd like, and I think that's an author's
Welcome to the club.
Yes, lament. What it does is get me in the door. It makes it respectable that I'm not just trying to sell a book. I'm trying to sell a book that has won 13 awards in many different genres.
And countries.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I think that should be large.
Yes. And also the book trailer, my book trailer, that was another very important.
Explain, book trailer.
Okay. A book trailer just is a little video about your book, and mine is only 2 minutes because I felt anything longer, people lose interest. And it shows my garden. It's not a voiceover video, but it's basically get back to nature. When the world gets cold, go back to your roots. And I say that is the essence of my book, and it has all the pictures of the ducks and all of that. And that was very important because instead of writing a lot of words, I would give the link to the video and say, if you watch my book trailer, you will realize the essence of my book. So between the awards and that, I feel it's very important. At the Romance Authors Luncheon you and I went to, I sat with Katy Perry, and she was very impressed with the awards, not for this book, but she said, please take a year to write another book and then send it to me. So the awards gave me like an entree into places I might not have been,
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. And so obviously you are writing another book.
Yes. It won't be the same because out here the animals are wilder. So I won't have that connection. It will, of course, have animals in it, but I think it will have also stories about family. It'll be more of a memoir, but basically written like this is.
Being a person who grew up in the city, have you ever thought about doing urban animals?
No, I never did. I hardly ever go into the city, but that's a very interesting thought.
Well, I think that you have really a lot of good marketing tools. You have your awards, you have a website.
Yes.
And you write a column for a newspaper, and now you're on the writer's stream.
Yes, yes.
So I think you have a lot of good marketing tools. If the book really takes off to your satisfaction, have you thought of republishing it larger, more expensive, good photographs?
Yes, I've thought about what to do if it takes off, but I haven't come to any real decisions yet. I'm waiting for it to take off.
Okay, now, this is my favorite question. What's your most favorite part, your favorite part of writing?
The actual writing of it, when I lose myself, when I don't sit at the computer and stare at the screen with writer's block,
Yeah,
when
I
it
know.
flows and you write something.
You're looking out the window.
Yes, and all of a sudden you're writing and you look at it and you hardly have to edit it. That's my favorite part.
Yeah, and what was the most challenging part? I think I know.
Yeah, it was the publishing.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the most challenging. And now the marketing. But I'm on every social media site.
Me too.
And I just got an email Saturday. I'm going to be on a radio program in Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Wonderful.
So that's part of this social media. They wouldn't have found me otherwise.
Absolutely. And I just am fascinated with this garden. Someday I'm going to come out and visit
Oh, I
you.
wish you would.
And it was great having you, Maria.
Oh,
Maria
thank you.
Daddino.
It was great being here. Thank you.
Tails, DuckTales. Maria's DuckTales. Those were hair